Hey guys, this is Tim with Little Crow Gunworks. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to spend time in the series talking about the equipment we used. I think that's all we're going to cover today. I'll probably tell you a little bit about myself, and then so you guys can kind of get to know me a little bit, and then we'll go into the equipment we used. And I think the next video, I want this video to be reasonably short, and then the next video will go into the rifle we used and the cartridge I selected for this series, and probably the components as well and why. And then after that we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the steps and the process and all that. But first I'd like to start off by saying thank you to all of our viewers and new subscribers. This series has only been out for exactly 5 days now. That intro video has been out exactly 5 days, and it has over 21,000 views already and has generated almost 1,600 subscribers already in 5 days. So that is a tremendous turnout. I'm really happy with that, and the video is still pulling like a steam train and getting views and subscribers every day. So really happy about that. I think the turnout is going to be really good for this series. It turns out there's a lot of people looking to get the rifle shooting better and aren't happy with the sum of the information that's out there, or maybe they're just trying to pick up a couple more nuggets here and there. So that's really good. I'm really happy with that. And there's a ton of comments, hundreds. So I'm going to have a really hard time. It's basically going to be impossible for me to keep up with all the comments, so I do appreciate you guys commenting. Those that can be answered quickly, I will answer. But primarily the comments so far are just showing support, like everybody's saying thank you, and they appreciate it and are looking forward to it and excited about the series. And so it's really good. So far, so good. For those of you that are new and didn't watch the 7mm Showdown series, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Tim Johnson. I'm I guess you'd call me the business development director for Little Crow Gunworks. It's my job to basically grow the company and keep track of all the X's and O's and try to grow the business as best I can. And I've been doing that primarily through the use of YouTube, trying to put out good information and build trust with the viewers, so that way when you guys want a custom rifle or a rebarrel or a new scope or trigger or trimmer or whatever, hopefully you'll return the favor and throw us a bone and let us supply you with those things. And so far it's working very well. The channel had, I think, like 400 subscribers when I started messing with it in spring of 23, and we blew past 8,000. We're coming up on 9,000 subscribers already, and I think we just broke 5,000 on December 30th. So at the end of last year, we were at 5,000, and now we're already almost up to 9,000 in 3.5 months. So channel's growing like crazy. I had set out a goal of hopefully hitting 20,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That might be optimistic. I don't think so. I think we're going to surpass that, but we'll see how it goes. So I've been working on trying to grow the channel, and a little bit of background on me, or a little bit of personal information, I guess. I'm creeping up on 43 years of age, having a birthday in May. I've been happily married for a little over 10 years. I have 2 kids. My son is 8.5, and my daughter's going to be 3 in about a month. And I have 2 dogs. What else? Grew up, born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota. Grew up there. Spent most of my young adult life there, and then moved out to the suburbs when I bought a house when I was 27, and been out here ever since. Lived in Wisconsin for a few years when I was a kid, but primarily been in Minnesota. I am a rabid long-range aficionado, whatever. Fan, shooter. I don't really compete in anything major. I do like some little primitive local competitions, but no, national level matches or anything like that. I'm not really married to any one discipline. Shoot some bench rest, a lot of prone long range shooting, prone ELR, dabble in that. I mentioned in the 7 series, our most recent successful shot was a couple years ago now. My buddy and I shot at a 22-inch tall by 30-inch wide rectangle that you'll see in the series. It's a target I have set up at 640 yards. We shot at that in South Dakota at 2,073 yards, which is 1.17 miles, and we went 4 for 5. The first shot I had the wind perfect, but the first shot went over the top, adjusted, and then hit it 4 shots in a row. And that was in 98-degree heat and tons of mirage and wind and bad conditions. But so I'm a really avid long-range shooter. I shoot probably 3,000 to 4,000 rounds a year. 75% of those or more are at long range. So got a lot of practice. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and all self-taught, reading different things and watching videos and whatever. I didn't have a mentor, like I mentioned in the first video. Nobody taught me how to do this. So this will be basically the beginning and the end of my bio, that of how much I'm gonna talk about myself personally. I just wanted you guys that don't know me to get to know me a little bit, and that I'm kind of a what you see is what you get kind of guy. I'm very direct and to the point and blunt, almost to a fault. But we're all adults and we don't have time for bullshit. So I try to just, other than this, I'm going to try to just be direct and to the point, because I think that's the most helpful approach. And if I offend you, I guess I'm sorry in advance, but I'm not going to tiptoe around issues. If I believe something, I'm just going to tell you the way I think it is, and you can disagree. That's fine. I guess I should say something about that. I expect a little bit of pushback in the comments if you disagree with something that I do, but I'm also doing this for your benefit for free. So feel free to comment if you want to say, hey, good video, but I disagree. Here's where I disagree. I'm totally cool with that. But if you're just coming right out of the gate being an asshole, I'm going to punt you from the channel because I don't need you. So there's your one disclaimer on that. I feel free to comment and push back or whatever, but be careful because I don't have time for bullshit. So now that that's out of the way, I think we can go into the screen recording and go into the equipment we used and talk about that a little bit. For better or worse, this is probably going to be the least interesting video of the series, but it's necessary because we have to go through the equipment and you guys need to know what I used, and I'll talk a little bit about why, but in later videos I'll spend more time on talking about why I do specific things with each of these tools and how I use them and why it's valuable and all that. But I just kind of want to get the list out of the way, so you guys know what I use, and in case you're looking to get equipment or whatever, have ideas on that. I want to get that out of the way, and then I'll talk a little bit at the end about one thing I don't do and why, and then we'll put a bow on it and try to wrap this up. So it looks like I'm already 7-8 minutes in, so I better get going. All right, minimize that. Get our screen recording fired up here. 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Okay, so this is a grainy picture of the press that I have. It is a Redding Ultra Mag. It's a really big, heavy, single-stage press. Because I'm a one-trick pony, I just shoot bolt action, long range. I don't even own an AR, and I have one handgun, and I don't even own a shotgun. So I'm a one-trick pony. And because of that, I don't load enough volume to necessitate a progressive press, and so I use a single stage, and I think that is the best way to go for peak precision. There are guys that load precision ammo on progressive presses, but I don't recommend it because they need a ton of tuning, and you need to be able to take an ungodly number of measurements and be able to keep track of everything, and it's more hassle than it's worth unless you shoot more than me. But like I said, I shoot 3,000 to 4,000 rounds a year, all hand loads, and all done on this single stage press. So I recommend a single stage. Which one you get, I don't think matters all that much. Everybody makes a good press now. You can spend as much or as little as you want on this item. There's some really expensive single stage presses out there now that are ridiculously expensive. Are they going to produce measurable differences on target? I don't know. You guys can see the results that I got in this series, and then you can make your own judgment call at the end if I would have been able to shoot smaller if I had a more expensive press. I can tell you right now the answer is probably no, but you can make that call on your own. And I'm trying to kind of walk through this in a logical order of, what equipment you need, and then if you guys have questions, hopefully I'll answer them as we go along here in the series. So if you feel like I don't talk about one specific item enough, just be patient and know that I'll probably get into more of the details. The dies that I used for this series are made by Gunworks. They are a competition die set because, not that I think that's always necessary, but I guess one thing I should say is one guy gave me a little bit of a hard time in the comments on the first video because he felt like he was like 2/3 of the way into the video, I think he said, and he felt like he was sitting in the wrong class. And I said, responded, I said, to be fair, that I did name this precision hand loading. So this is not going to be beginners 101 hand loading. What I'm trying to do is assume that all of you have a foundational knowledge on how to assemble ammo, but you're maybe just not getting the results that you want, and you want them to shoot better, and that's why you're here. So everything is going to be through that lens. Like, you have an idea of how this stuff works, but you want to get it to shoot better, and you need to know the nitty-gritties of how to make that happen. So for those of you that are like brand new and don't know anything about it, I'm sorry, you're going to be left in the dust. So the die set that I used, again, made by Gunworks. It's a competition die set. It's a full-length sizing die with neck bushings that you put in the die to determine how much it sizes the neck down to help set your neck tension. And then the seating die is a competition micrometer seating die that you're able to adjust the seating depth in 1/1000th of an inch increments. And then this other tool on the right side, this little silver cylinder, is a shoulder bump gauge that you use, or a headspace gauge that you can use to set your sizing die depth to determine how much you're actually sizing the brass. If you guys want to know how, when you hear shoulder bump, I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. So don't worry about it. We'll get into it more as we go along, but you do need some kind of a gauge like this to measure the brass to the shoulder to know how much you're sizing it. And I'll go into that later on here more too. If you don't get these dies, there's other tools you can get that I'll show you here coming up. Priming cases. We got real fancy with this. I use a RCBS hand primer. That's it. I don't use anything else. I have two of them. One of them is set up for small rifle primers. The other one's set up for large and magnum rifle primers. They both live in a drawer, and I use them as needed. And that's all the more complicated we got in the series, and that's all the more complicated I get for Seton primers, even to shoot ELR. I prime with a hand primer. So, scale. This is fancy. This is complicated. This is not my scale. This is a generic image that I pulled off the internet that looked clean and whatever. This is a A&D FX 120i lab scale with a McDonald's Innovations Auto Trickler V4. McDonald Innovations Auto Trickler V4. These are made in Canada. A guy named Adam McDonald, who's a national level, I think he's an FTR shooter, F-class FTR, which is 308. And he designed this along with the shot marker system. It's a target system that's used in competition shooting. But this is a very complicated scale that runs off an app on your cell phone that the long and the short of it is it's a tunable digital system that allows you to quickly weigh powder like to the kernel. So it's accurate. You see, it's accurate to the second decimal point, to 0.02, which, like a kernel of Varget, that's how much one kernel of Varget weighs, is 0.02. And some kernels can be more than that, usually like Magnum powders that you'd use in Magnum cartridges. Those kernels can be up to 0.09 grains, but .02 is a pretty common weight. So for, average cartridges that would use slower or medium burn rate powders, the scale is accurate to the kernel. And I got that one for the precision, but also for the speed. It's incredibly fast. And with how much I shoot, I needed the time savings. So that's what I got. This setup, as you see it at the time of this recording, is probably $1,300 or $1,400. You don't have to have this. It's just, this is what I have. And in the series, I did some testing at long range with where I intentionally varied the charge weight just to see how that would show up at long range, to show you guys that, like, even if you don't have perfect charge weights to the kernel, here's how much it really matters at distance, because at short range, that's not really going to show up most of the time. If you're in a stable sweet spot as far as charge weight, you can have some slop there, and you're probably not going to see that at short range, but at long range you will. So I wanted to test that intentionally to show you guys how that affects it. But don't feel like you have to have this. Most digital scales are fine. For peak precision, I don't recommend a powder measure or relying solely on a beam scale. Guys can do that, but it's so slow that I think some form of an electronic scale is a better way to go if you're going to shoot any amount of volume. Funnels I use are Saturn funnels. They're aluminum, I think, stamped aluminum, and they have like some ridges on the inside which help prevent clogging. They have a brass collar around the neck that slides over. They're caliber specific, so it slides over the neck of your case and you don't have to hold it, which is priceless for me. There's a lot of good funnel kits out there. Area 419 has a top shelf one. RCBS now has a really great funnel system. I don't think either of those existed when I bought all my Saturn funnels, so that's what I have. I wasn't going to throw away my Saturn funnels just to get, a newfangled funnel. These work fine. And then this is a picture of the Hornady lock and load overall length tool that I use to figure out where my throat is, like where the lands are in any given barrel. So this is basically like a straw that it's threaded on the end, and Hornady sells these modified cases that you thread it into for whatever cartridge you're trying to load. And then it allows you to slip whatever bullet you're trying to use into that case, and then it has this gray plunger on the inside that you can use to push the bullet forward. So what I'll usually do is I'll run a cleaning rod down the barrel, and I'll go into this more in the series too, but I run a cleaning rod down the barrel to push on the end of the bullet, and then the plunger is pushing on the bottom of the bullet. So you slide that into the chamber, and then you can use the plunger and the cleaning rod to kind of play that bullet back and forth and bounce it off the rifling and figure out where it stops, and then tighten a thumb screw, use the cleaning rod to push everything back out, and then you can measure either cartridge overall length or measure to the ogive and figure out where your rifling is, so you know how much you're jumping the bullet, and on and on. And this tool, what this tool does is, in my opinion, provides you with touch. It tells you where the bullet touches the rifling, and then any amount you seat it deeper is how much jump you have, or any amount you seat it longer is how much you're jamming, which I don't recommend for almost anything. So once you tighten that thumb screw and back this out, you would use, so this tool again is a Hornady overall length tool, and then these modified cases are sold separately for whatever cartridge you have. And then when you pull that out, you can either measure from base to tip, which I don't recommend because there's too much variation, or you can get these Hornady bullet comparator kits that you attach to your calipers, and that allows you to measure to the ogive, which is what I recommend because that's the most consistent place on the bullet that is going to allow you to get really consistent seating depth. So in my opinion, like, you can measure overall length to make sure it's going to fit in your magazine. Once you know it's going to fit in your magazine, you should be measuring to the ogive, and this is the tools you need to do it. So that's the Hornady bullet comparator kit, And here you see that overall length tool with the little thumb screw to lock it, and then the little gray plunger that slides in and out of that red tube. So that's what I use to figure out where my rifling is and figure out how much I'm going to jump the bullet, or where I'm going to start at least. And then, so if you go to the range, you do your testing, or whatever you're going to test, your whatever it is, your ladder test, whatever. If you don't end up shooting everything and you need to pull bullets, this is what I use for pulling bullets. It's the RCBS collet puller. So you buy the bullet puller die, and then these collets are sold separately, and they're caliber specific, and they just slide into this die. And then as you, this handle is threaded, and it threads into the bottom of this collet, and as you tighten that handle and twist that handle, it basically sucks that collet up into the die, and it squeezes these 4 jaws onto the bullet. So this is a way for you to pull bullets out of the brass without using the hammer like inertia pullers that inevitably, when the bullet flies out, it ends up getting damaged in the end of the hammer. So I started with those and then promptly threw them away once I learned that this tool exists, because this allows you to pull bullets without damaging them, so you can reuse them. And this is not a very expensive tool, so I think everybody should have one. And then for once you get into sizing, this is if your die set doesn't come with a bump gauge like my wooden dies, this is another alternative. These are the Hornady headspace gauges. They're sold in like a kit of 4 or 5 for different body sizes on your brass. And what this allows you to do is, after you fire a cartridge, the brass will kind of melt and form to the size of the chamber. So when it comes out, you have basically a dummy of, okay, this is how big my chamber is. Well, when you're trying to figure out how much to size the brass, that's important information. So you have and I'll go into this more in series again, but you have your fired piece of brass. You need to know how much to size it back down to the shoulder to figure out the right amount of shoulder bump. Well, this is the tool you use to measure it, these headspace gauges. And in order to get a good measurement, I recommend everybody have a Lee universal decapping die. This is a hollow die that just has a decapping rod in it that just knocks the primer out. It doesn't do anything else. This die is like $12. They do sell replacement pins in case you bung it up or wreck it. They do also sell undersized pins, which I recommend if you're going to use like Lapua, Peterson, Alpha, ADG, any of their brass, because they have a smaller flash hole in the brass. And if you just use the standard pin, it's going to basically punch your expensive brass. It's going to punch your flash hole out to this bigger size. So I'd recommend, if you're going to use any high-end brass, just get the undersized pin and install it and forget about it. So that way it's good for decapping any brass you have. The reason that's important is you want to get, after you fire the piece of brass, you want to take 5 to 10 pieces, knock the primer out, so you can measure with this headspace gauge to the shoulder and not have the primer interfering with your measurement. So when the primer's out of the way, you're getting a good measurement from the base of the case to the shoulder, and that measurement tells you, okay, this is how big my chamber is. And then you can also use those tools to know how much to screw in your sizing die to be able to check and go, okay, I got my die in, size a piece of brass, bring it out, measure it again using this headspace gauge or bump gauge, and compare it to how it was before you sized it, so you know how much you're actually sizing the brass, rather than just going by the instructions in the die box, which are oversizing the piss out of everything, unless it's like a modern cartridge like one of the PRCs or Creedmoor. If you follow the instructions in the die box, it's probably only sizing it 2 or 3 thousandths, which is what you want. But if you get like a 300 Win Mag or a 7 Rem Mag or something like that, and you just follow the instructions in the die box, you're sizing the brass 10, 12, 14 thousandths. And then every time you fire it, it has to stretch back that amount, which is why you get case head separations. And I'll go into that more later in the series. So to me, I would not even reload without having these, because this is going to allow you to get just the right amount of sizing on your brass, which is going to help promote precision in your rifle more than most of the other things that I'm going to show you in this series. So I think these are super important tools. Same with the overall length tool for finding where your rifling is. Those are indispensable tools. Like everything I'm showing you, except for the scale. You don't have to have that fancy of a scale, but single stage press, good electronic scale, and then all these other tools I think are indispensable. What else do we have here? So we got our Lee Universal decapping die. Oh, and then tumbling. I talked about this in the first video. I do own a wet stainless steel pin tumbler. I'll use it for if I pick stuff up off the ground that's super tarnished. I'll use it for that, or at the beginning of a project. So like, I'll go into that. But the brass that I use in this project, I wet tumbled before I started. But then after that, I just use this Frankfurt Arsenal case tumbler with just plain corncob media, or I have a goofy mix that I use that has like buckwheat in it and walnut and corncob. Like I experimented with that just to see what worked the best, but corncob's fine. You don't have to get carried away with the media. And I just use this to take the lube off after sizing. So you lube your cases, you size them. Well, after that, they're all gummy and sticky. I'll throw them in here, all gummy and sticky, and tumble them for whatever, however long, a couple hours, just to get the lube off, more so than anything. I don't care if they get shiny, but I'm just trying to get the lube off. And then after they're sized and you get the lube off, they're going to be longer than before you fired them. So if you need to trim them, obviously in this series, use our Little Crow Gunworks World's Finest Trimmer. I happen to use the number 2, so that's what I used. And this is, I have videos on our trimmers. They're the fastest trimmers in the industry. You can trim brass faster than anything else with our trimmers. They don't chamfer and deburr, but the time savings you get from trimming, like you can trim 1,500 pieces an hour if you can get your hand to move that fast. Like, do the math on that. So at 1,500 pieces an hour, you have time to do other things, chamfer, deburr, whatever. And then after you trim them, you need to chamfer and deburr the case mouth. And I use the RCBS, I think this is called the Trim Mate Prep Center. And it comes with a deburring tool. I use that factory deburring tool, but the chamfer tool, I don't use this factory one that it comes with. I ordered I think it's an RCBS, the VLD chamfer tool, because most of the bullets I shoot are boat tails and made for long range, so I use the VLD chamfer tool, and then the standard RCBS brushes. And in the series, I'll show you how I use this, but that's what I use for case prep, because to me, processing brass after it's fired to get it back to ready to load is like the worst soul-sucking process of hand loading. So for me, it's all about speed and efficiency and trying to get it done as fast as possible, consistently, but as fast as possible, because I hate it and I shoot a lot. So I spend way too many hours doing this crap and I absolutely hate it. So for me, it's how fast can I get it done? And then I use for a chronograph, I use the lab radar. This is something I could do a whole video on, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to try to simplify it because I don't want this to be about equipment, guys. I really don't want this series to be about equipment because in my opinion, it's not that important. What you do with the equipment and what you test and how you test and the powder you choose and all that stuff to me is way more important than the equipment you use. A lot of guys in this industry that are making YouTube videos, they are equipment whores, for lack of a better word. It's just, I have to have the best of the best of the best of the best of everything. But some of them, their process sucks. So, and they don't really know what they're doing. So then at the end of it, the end results are horrific, even though they're using top of the line everything, because their process sucks. And I wanted this series above anything else to be about process, not equipment, not the cartridge I picked, not the components I picked. Like, you're going to see as we go on here, it's all about process, not equipment. I happen to use the lab radar because I think it's the best chronograph out there. This is going to be contentious. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I think it's the best one. The Garmin's great. Athlon is actually coming out with a Doppler chronograph at the end of this month, which we'll be selling in our shop and on the website. I think that's going to be good. And then the Magneto Speed is a great chronograph, but you have to attach it to the barrel. And the Ahler 35P is kind of like the gold standard. That's like a lab grade optical chronograph. And outside of the ones I just mentioned, if you have a chronograph and you use it, that's fine. It's not accurate. Applied Ballistics did a thorough test of most of the chronographs out there. If it's a budget chronograph, it's not accurate, period. So don't use it as hard, fast data. There's certain ones that can be fairly accurate, meaning if it tells you your extreme spread of the shots you took is 20, your extreme spread really is 20, but the velocities it gave you is not accurate. So you're probably going to notice that there wasn't any equipment in there for annealing. Why is that? Because I don't do it. I can hear the heads exploding now. Why? Well, I think annealing has value for some people. I think if you are wildcatting, where you're trying to turn one cartridge into something else, it helps to prep the brass and soften it to get it ready for sizing, to convert it from one cartridge to the other. I think if you load things at really low pressure and you're trying to get like 50 firings off your brass, or if you have obsolete brass that they don't make anymore, or it's really hard to find or whatever, I think annealing has value for you to try to keep the necks from splitting to last as long as possible. If you demand absolute perfection from your loads, like you're spending $20,000 a year traveling around the country shooting F-class or bench rest or PRS or whatever. But I knew this was going to be really contentious, but I wanted to save it for last because you guys were going to put two and two together that I didn't show anything about annealing. So if you're looking for information on annealing in this series, it will not be here. I don't do it. So anyway, I think this looks like this video is a little over a half hour. I think that's enough for now. I'm going to record another video tomorrow and try to keep these things rolling and not have them all be super long, because I'm finding that if they're really long, the audience retention is not that great. So I'm going to try to do more shorter videos. There will inevitably be some long videos in this series, but I'm going to try to keep them around this like half hour or so mark. So next we're going to go into the rifle we used and the bipod and tripod that we shot off of, and what cartridge I selected, and I'll probably go into the components as well and why, and that's going to blow some hair back, so be ready for that. But I think that's it. Again, thank you guys. I'm really excited with how well this is being received already, and I'm looking forward to it. I have no idea how many videos the series is going to be. It might be 20, it might be 25, I don't know. I'm going to do whatever it takes. So thanks again. We'll see you guys on the next one.